Welcome to Vampires and Mermaids. I'm Erin.
I'm Risha.
And I actually did our intro this week.
You did. You sounded so good, too.
Yay.
This is why you go second, so that people listen to me, and then they like just wait for you, because they're like, you always have the person with the better voice go second.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think it's so that people who want accuracy can know when to turn off.
Oh, no.
Basically like, oh, Risha's done. I also am done. And the people who stay for the like a little extra bullshit, got you.
Well, today, this week, we, for the vampires, are going to be talking about Longinus. Erin, Catholic school really failed you because he's a saint.
Oh,
okay?
No! Well. That's rough. Okay. Oh my God, it's so real. Okay.
Okay, so the name Longinus was given to the Roman soldier who pierced Jesus' side while he was on the cross.
Oh, shit. I knew that somewhere in the deep recluse pieces of my brain.
Yes.
Okay.
And so the legend grew over the years to the point where people say he converted to Christianity after the crucifixion.
Are you going to tell me he was a vampire?
Just wait. In some denominations, he is venerated as a saint. In some occult traditions, the act of piercing Jesus in the side turned Longinus into a vampire. Longinus tasted the blood that poured from the wound at Jesus' side, and some accounts have him leaving the life of a soldier and then becoming a monk. And the way he died was being martyred by Pilate for his confession that Jesus was the Son of God. And it grew into the idea that if you had the blood and water of Christ, you became a vampire. And he was the one that encountered it the closest.
Oh.
And so that was actually something that became a common idea, especially in like kind of medieval times, where people thought that Christians were vampires.
I've always wondered that. Like, even as a kid in Catholic school, they're like, no, this is the blood of Jesus. And I'm like, this is a symbol? And they're like, no, it is. And even like science-minded 9-year-old Erin was like, if I broke this down chemically, it's not. Sorry to any of the Catholics. Believe what you want. You know, we're all just trying to get through the world.
Also, a lot of Lutheran denominations say the same
really?
thing.
Jesus.
Yep.
Okay. Jesus. But that always drove me crazy because then I'm always like, is that not cannibalism or like vampiric?
We could get into a theological debate and discussion about
Do you want to save that for a different one? That's probably like a whole other episode.
We should invite Michael on for that.
Yeah, let's do it. Okay. I like that.
Right.
These are my questions, and one day I will have them answered.
Also, so it gets into another person in Jesus' circle.
Damn, this is wild. Two vampires?
Two. Well, actually, I do want to have a little tiny caveat to another fantastical explanation of where vampires come from, and it has to do with Atlantis. It suggests that the people of Atlantis were the first to create vampires. In their quest to prolong life, they conducted biological and genetic experiments that resulted in new humans that could live for centuries, but had to drink the blood of ordinary humans in order to survive.
Huh.
And these vampires somehow managed to escape the Great Flood.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's
just a random little caveat that I found while I was looking up Jesus' circle.
Amazing. That's funsies, though.
So, also, another obscure myth holds that Judas Iscariot, so Judas, the one who betrayed Jesus, became the first vampire after he died by suicide for betraying Jesus. Another interesting origin of the vampire myth is its association with the negative image of Christ or the Antichrist, as a series of oppositions can be found. Blood in Christianity is the symbol of life-giving force of Christ. In the vampire myth, the vampire drinks in blood that Christ gave away. Christ is the source and an energy that radiates, whereas the vampire sucks in energy like a black hole. Christ gave his life for humanity, and the vampire takes it away. So some scholars have also noticed that there's a parallel between the use of the spear that pierced Jesus on the cross and the staking of the vampire.
Whoa.
Yeah.
What?
Isn't that interesting?
Oh my gosh. Wow. I'm speechless. I have so much I want to say and also have no idea what to say. That's wild.
Yeah. Well, because I'm like, we're getting close to Easter.
Yeah.
And around the time, this will probably come out after or right around, possibly.
Yeah, this will come out in like 3 weeks.
Yeah, so pretty close to
Yeah.
Easter time. Happy Easter, y'all.
Happy Easter. Go eat some yummy jelly beans.
Find some eggs.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's what I have.
Oh my gosh. I want to stay on this. I know I need to go on my topic, but how am I supposed to talk about seals after this? Oh, okay.
Jesus helped to create the seals because he's a part of the 3 peoples of God. So,
or as Celtic Thunder would say, all God's creatures got a place in the choir.
There you go.
In the choir. Well, I want to stay on that so bad. I'm like forcing myself on my topic.
Okay.
Huh.
I was like, do you have anything you want to say?
I don't know. I do, but I can't. Okay, I'm glitching.
Oh, no.
Anything I want to stay on this, but I also know like, okay, we're going to do an episode with Michael. So I feel like I can't dive too deep.
Fair.
Because then it's just going to be like, we're going to save this talk about Michael.
Yeah.
But I just feel validated in a weird way that I'm not the only psychopath Catholic school kid. Well, really, you're in Catholic school, right? And you're like, this feels a little vampiric sometimes. And everyone's like, how dare you? How dare your mind go to that? What kind of devil? And it's like, I am dirty. I am wrong. And it's like, see, other people thought that too. Religion teacher. I'm really excited about Vampire Jesus. Okay, Vampire Jesus' Circle. That sounds like
Jesus'
a band.
Vampire Circle.
Oh, Jesus' Vampire Circle. Yeah, it sounds like a club, doesn't it? That's sick. This is 180 tangent. I did think of I actually thought, I'm like, maybe one day I should just cover a vampire one just to really throw off Risha.
Yeah.
But I think you should cover it if you want, but if you don't, that's okay. But I thought of another like fun, lighthearted one that you should cover.
Oh.
But I just want you to cover the song Vampire by Olivia Rodrigo.
Oh, I love that song.
Right? And I don't know, like, I feel like it'd be interesting to break it down and find anything that actually does tie.
Yeah. Oh,
so,
yeah, I'll totally do that. Yes.
Okay, yay.
Ooh.
Yeah, because I was like, well, she doesn't want to. That's okay. Because I could, I guess. But, like, I'd much rather you do it. Because I feel like you're going to get really into, like, the wordsmithing of it, you know, and, like, the word origins.
Love it. Okay.
Okay. Well, I'm going to read a little short story that Risha found for me, actually.
Yeah.
So thank you, Risha, for this week's idea.
It's in my fairy tale book.
Yeah, it's so cute. I really enjoy this. I'm going to preface this with I am the kid who hated read aloud time, and I really thought about just making Risha read it, but I'm going to be brave.
You can do it.
Thank you. But bear with me. So this is The Wounded Seal, which is a Scottish folklore fairy tale. I guess it's wrote down. It's technically a fairy tale. So we're going to read the story, and then I'm going to dive into it a little bit. So my part's going to be a little longer this week.
Woo!
So there once dwelt on the northern coast, not far from John O'Groat's house, a man who gained his living by fishing. He was partially devoted to the killing of the seals, in which he had great success. One evening, just as he had returned home from his usual occupation, he was called upon by a man on horseback, who was an utter stranger to him, but who said he was to come on the part of a person who wished to make a large purchase of seal skins from him, and wanted to see him for the purpose that very evening. He therefore desired him to get up behind him and come away without any delay. Urged by the hope of profit, he consented, and away they went with such speed that the wind which was in their backs seemed to be in their faces. That's fast as fuck, boy. At length, they reached the verge of a stupendous precipice overhanging the sea, where his guide bade him alight, as they were now at the end of their journey. "But where," said he, "is the person you spoke of?" "You'll see him presently," said the guide, and catching hold of him, he plunged with him into the sea. They went down and down till at last they came to a door which led into a range of apartments inhabited by seals. And the man, to his amazement, now saw that he himself was become one of these animals. They seemed all in low spirits, but they spoke kindly to him, and assured him of his safety. His guide now produced a huge gully or joctaleg, 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 at sight of which, thinking his life was about to be taken away, he began to cry for mercy. "Did you ever see this knife before?" said the guide. He looked at it and saw it was his own, which he had that very day stuck into a seal who made his escape with it sticking in him. He did not, therefore, attempt to deny that it had been his own property. "Well," said the guide, "that seal was my father, and now lies dangerously ill, and as it is only you who can cure him, I have brought you hither." He then led him to an inner room, where an old seal lay suffering grievously from a cut in his hindquarters. The man was then desired to lay his hands on the wound, at which it instantly healed, and the patient arose hale and sound. All now was joy and festivity in the abode of the seals, and the guide turned to the seal hunter, said, "I will now take you back to your family, but you must first take a solemn oath never again to kill a seal as long as you live." Hard as the condition was, he cheerfully accepted. His guide then laid hold on him, that's such a weird way to say grab, laid hold on him, and they rose up till they reached the surface of the sea and landed on the cliff. The guide breathed on him, and they resumed the human form. They then mounted the horse and sped away like lightning till they reached the fisherman's house. At parting, his companion left with him such a present as made him think light of giving over his seal hunting. I don't know what that present was.
Nope.
But it sure sounds nice. So that's the story of the wounded seal.
I always think it's funny when they say they breathed on them to do something.
Are they just like...
I know that's what I pictured,
Yeah.
but I'm also wondering if it's not like they said an incantation, but they can't like write that
would
down.
Make sense.
You know?
Like they spoke upon them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because, I just picture like a...
Right? And I was like,
Yeah. Okay, I'm glad it's not just me. I had that same thought. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. So are they Selkies? Basically. Basically. We're going to get more into Selkies next week. I decided originally we were going to go over it this week, but I fell down a science nerd hole.
Yay.
So we're going to break it into two parts.
Science nerd.
Yay.
Science nerd.
Science nerd. Science nerd. My favorite thing. So they are basically Selkies. Selkies are disguised as creatures who can put on or take off a seal skin and become a seal or a human. They didn't really like take off or put on. It just kind of happened.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they're basically Selkies. But we'll cover more in the next episode. But I have a better question for you. What is a seal? Because guess what? It's not that straightforward of an answer.
Is it in the same family as the dugong and
No.
the man? Well, not the manatee, because that's Sirenia.
Oh, God, you are giving such good transition. So a seal is a wide term referring to a diverse group of animals called pinnipeds,
Aw.
which means fin or flipper-footed. This is actually a clade, a CLADE, which is it essentially breaks down even further between the order and the family. So if you don't know about the different groupings, go listen to the manatees episode because you're going to need that. There are actually 33 species under the umbrella of seal. What? I had no idea.
Leopard seal. That's all I can do.
Harbor seal, gray seal.
Okay.
But it gets wilder. So under those 33 species, there are 3 families.
Oh, wow.
There are, we're not going to get into the scientific names of them because that's just more pronunciation for me to butcher. But the first family is being like true seals. So yes, like the harbor seals, leopard seals. The second family is fur seals and sea lions.
Oh, sure.
And the third family is walruses. Walruses are technically a seal.
Aw.
Pinnipeds does not include sea otters. They are actually under the same group as polar bears.
Otters?
Sea otters and polar bears are under the same group. Or clade or whatever, depending on where it gets broke up. Yeah, also all these seals are under carnivora, as in they're all carnivores, which I knew but I never thought of. I just thought it was kind of interesting.
I know that because of Pebble and the Penguin.
What?
The Pebble and the Penguin movie.
I have not seen that.
Isn't that I think he gets chased by a seal in that.
Oh, I knew they eat meat, but I just don't think of them as being meat eaters. I think of them being more omnivore, which I know they're not, but I don't know, just kind of interesting. Yeah. But just a little quick side note is there are 4 total marine groups. The first we've already covered, Sirenia.
Yeah.
They are manatees, like you mentioned earlier. Today we're talking about pinnipeds, which is another group. So that means there are only 2 left. So eventually, hopefully, we're going to cover all 4 marine groups.
Ooh.
So the other 2 left are physipeds, which the pinnipeds are the fin flipper. The physipeds are those sea otters and polar bears. So they got the little feetsies. And then I'm really going to try hard not to say crustaceans. It's cetaceans.
Oh.
There we go. That's whales and the ever Risha hated dolphins. So a little bit on seal hunting. This is where I really fell down the rabbit hole. Seal hunting can be dated over 4,000 years ago, which is super freaking cool. Even though the story was Scotland, a lot of the information I found is based on the Inuit and Yupik people of North America, like Arctic region. So I'm going to be talking a lot about them, but there are obviously other cultures in different parts of the world where there are seals who had similar practices. So yeah, as mentioned, the Inuit and Yupik people consist of North American Arctic people, and they're also groups of like Native Americans or First Nations people in Canada. Both largely hunted for meat and warm pelts. Like many Native people, they actually believed in using the whole piece of the animal, using everything they could. It was a very respectful process, and it was a huge part of their life. In fact, objects made from seals, so specific tools, cords, fuel, boats, clothing, games, it keeps going, had specific words. So they actually had a totally different vocab just for those items when they were made from seal. It wasn't just rope, it was a specific word if that rope was made from seal. So I thought that was kind of interesting. They did the same thing where they had specific words referring to seasons, regions, and legends based on the seals, but they were specific words if they were based around seals. So instead of saying like, oh, it's fall, they'd have a specific word for like seal hunting season. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I thought that was kind of cool. So literally their entire vocab was even based around these animals. So it was obviously very important. You can find some really cool YouTube videos of Yupik people doing seal dances too. So they had different like seal hunt dances to celebrate the seal hunt or bring good fortune. Very interesting.
That's
really cool. Yeah. Seal hunting in Scotland, though, in our tale, it was shown as kind of a shameful thing, right? Like this guy was kind of the bad guy. So when did the tide change from being this really beautiful thing to a little bit more shameful? Guess what? European people.
Colonization.
Ding, ding, ding. So around the 1500s is when like migratory seal hunting started. So people coming into a region they were not from, hunting, taking them home. The first large-scale kind of expanded, fully commercialized operation, though, was in 1723, and that's because there was the addition of firearms. So now instead of having to like sneak up on the seal and trigger warning, I guess, for animal slaughter, instead of having to sneak up on the seal and club them as traditionally was done, you could shoot them from long range. You could shoot them in open water. It became a lot easier, which meant you could kill a lot more. That led to there being a lot of, exports. Obviously, it was now being used across the world. There was a higher demand, but that doesn't necessarily mean higher supply.
Right.
In the 1800s, shit just kind of went crazy in the 1800s as far as like the sealing went, sealing being seal hunting. Specifically in Newfoundland, there was a lot of seal hunting going on. In fact, they averaged around 400,000 seals hunted annually. And one year they topped 700,000 recorded. And that's just the recorded ones. Yeah, so that's a lot of freaking seals. Obviously, this took a major negative impact on the seals, and they started having a massive decline in population.
Oh, yeah.
Very similar to what happened with like the buffalo of America or the bison. When just the native people were hunting them respectfully and fully utilizing them. It was a really beautiful symbiotic relationship. When it was colonized and people just started shooting them for funsies or because they were inconvenient, it drastically negatively impacted
their population.
Yeah. Exactly. And then also the native people. So now you have, the Inuit people who are using this as a major food and fuel source, and their supply is also diminishing too. So it's just bad for everyone involved, basically. In 1893, the first attempt to regulate seal hunting started. It wasn't super successful, but it wasn't super successful because politics. So you had different countries claiming control over different parts of water, and it led to a bunch of issues. But the first international treaty happened in 1911, where there was actually some people actually came together and worked to protect the seals or come up with regulations on it. So it's not that they all out banned commercial hunting. They just limited it to a certain amount. So kind of, sorry, Europe, this is going to be confusing. But in the U.S., we have deer hunting. Different areas, you get different number of tags. So I'm from further up north in Minnesota. We would get a ton of deer tags because there were a ton of deer, and it was actually better to thin them out for the other animals and because there was less being hit on the road. Here, further south, there are less deer tags given out to people because we don't have as many deer. So it's a good way of kind of keeping that at a level amount. The same thing was done in 1911, basically. But World War II fucked it all up, and it kind of ended up being dissolved.
2 or 1?
2.
2 did?
Yeah. 2. So this is still an ongoing issue. Wow. Yes. A little fun fact, though, about the timeline. In 1912, so this is when there were international treaties, but sealing was very much alive and well. There was actually a sealing boat, the Algerine, was sent out to recover bodies from the Titanic because they were in similar areas. But I just thought that was an interesting little timeline fun fact. Dissolving of the 1911 treaty obviously was upsetting, but it did set precedents for later acts that would come into play. So as of today, commercially, there are only 5 nations that still allow sealing. They are Canada, Greenland, Namibia, Norway, and Russia. Now, the little tidbit on this that I love, oh God, I keep burping today, is that almost, as far as I could tell, all of the countries, but I don't want to make a total blanket statement, all of the countries that have outlawed seal hunting, so like the U.S., for example, have an excerpt in that allow Native people to still perform seal hunting, which is just, yes, thank you. Let's recognize our traditions and who was here first and not change people's way of life, but also let's protect our natural resources as well. Same thing with Canada, Greenland, Namibia, Norway, and Russia. They do still regulate heavily the amount of seals that can be taken, and it is very protected still. It's not just a free for all. Last little thing, we're going to go back to Scotland real quick. Scotland works very hard to protect their seal population, and they have for a long time. They have harbor seals and gray seals. That's 2 that we mentioned earlier. That's the only reason I knew those types of seals. The majority of those seals from the world are found in Scotland and the UK. They are found in other areas, but the vast majority are in Scotland and the UK, and gray seals are considered extremely rare. So obviously they want to protect them.
Yeah.
They had a commercial seal hunting ban go into effect. I'm not really sure when. I'm not sure when the overall ban went in, but in 2010 there was either a law that went into effect or a little asterisk that allowed commercial fisheries to shoot seals if they were attacking their fisheries as a protection source.
Sure.
Which makes sense.
Yeah.
That actually got overturned though in June 2022. Yes, June 2022, because the US actually takes a lot of salmon from Scotland. That's a major import for the U.S. to get their salmon from Scotland, and they said, hey, guess what? If you keep shooting seals, we don't want any more of your salmon.
Oh.
So Scotland, partially to protect the seals, they worked a lot with the Humane Society, and they did a lot of research too. I'm not saying it was strictly economic, but it definitely expedited the process a little bit to revoke that shooting allowance. So now they're not even allowed to shoot seals if they're attacking the fisheries.
Wow.
So there's a complete ban on Scotland. I don't know if the native people are still allowed to hunt there. I assume they are because I was finding that everywhere else. And frankly, shame on you if they're not. But from what I can tell, they are. That is what I have on seals today. I do want to put a little excerpt or a little disclaimer in, not excerpt. Excerpt. It's not a word I'm using anyway. A little disclaimer that sealing is a very debated topic as far as humane treatment of animals go. I'm going to touch on it real briefly here. If you want to talk more about it, message me on Instagram. I'm happy to have the discussion. I can go more in depth on it, but that could be a whole episode of itself. So shooting seals pretty much not allowed for the most part. Clubbing is the way that's typically done, where you hit a seal at the back of the head, it knocks them unconscious, and then kills them. That looks really bad, and it doesn't look pretty. Let's be honest. No slaughtering does, but the act of clubbing is seen as very violent typically. Like any type of animal slaughtering or animal husbandry, in my opinion, it all comes down to the management. And there are people who do it very, very well and correctly with minimal pain to the animal, and there are people who don't. Mm-hmm. So I'm not going to speak necessarily on my thoughts on it as a whole. I just think it needs to be recognized that there are people who do it properly. And just because there are people who don't doesn't mean that it's wrong across the board. Also, just because something looks bad doesn't necessarily mean that it is bad.
Yeah.
So, for example, the vast majority of cattle that are slaughtered, at least in the United States, have an electric bolt gun used on them. This is essentially an electric bolt that goes through the skull and it knocks them unconscious. I believe it severs the brainstem. It's been a hot minute since I've studied this, and it renders them completely unconscious. It's the most humane way that you can kill an animal. It doesn't look good, though. Clubbing essentially does the same thing, just from an external source. And it looks more violent because it's not a nice little tidy machine. So that's just why, before you make a jump assumption, especially on the native people who've been doing this for literally thousands of years, get the facts, look more into it, and just remember it all comes down to, especially those commercial population or those commercial groups, it comes down to management at the end of the day and who's running it. And that's like anything with animal care, is that it really is more of an individual situation than an overall umbrella most of the time. So that's my little TSA. PSA. God, I can't talk today. Not TSA. That's my PSA on sealing. And thank you, Risha, for finding my topic for today, the wounded seal from Scottish fairy tales. Woo! And you found a few other kids' books, too. Now you're making me yawn.
I know, I was yawning. Well, on that page, there's another one on the front one. Yeah,
I saw that.
Yeah.
So I'm probably going to cover a few more of those, too, intermittently. I don't know when you want those books back. Can I hold on to them for a little longer?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Feel free.
If you need them back immediately, let me know.
I'll let you know.
Okay. Yeah. But that's what we got for this week.
Cool.
If you're not already following us on Instagram, go ahead and follow. You can email us at vampsandmers@gmail.com. Like and subscribe wherever you listen. Rate us if you can. If you don't like us, don't rate us. Goodbye.
Yeah.
Why are you still here? This is like a 20-some minute episode. Goodbye. Right? But otherwise, cover your
necks. Yep, cover your necks and watch your tails, or
stay thirsty and keep wet.
Obscurantism and obfuscation.
Orally observed, gentle listener.
Gentle listener.
Gentle listener.
Gentle listener.
Obviated objects of oblivion.
Obambulating about.
Offered unto you.
Offered unto you.
Offered unto you.
In the Tapestry Radio Network.
TapestryRadio.org.
From our fancy to yours.